Brookhaven was the kind of neighborhood that people dreamed about. Tidy driveways, two-car garages, trimmed hedges, and weekend barbecues gave it the aura of a perfect community, a place where problems seemed as rare as cloudy days in July. It was nestled between two quiet townships and hugged by a thick border of pine trees, giving it a secluded, almost storybook charm. Children rode their bikes freely, mail carriers waved to homeowners, and nearly every family had a welcome mat at their door and flowers blooming in their front yard. It was a place that prided itself on harmony. That was, until the Carters moved in. Isabel Carter, a former real estate agent and a mother of two, had moved into 48 Meadow Lane 6 months ago with her husband, Nathan, and their children, Tyler, age 10, and baby Zoe, just under a year. They had bought the property at a lower-than-average price after the previous owners relocated abruptly. Isabel, with her assertive personality and high expectations, had quickly earned a reputation. She was friendly, yes, but also direct, too direct for some of the older residents who preferred quiet smiles and passive diplomacy. Her immediate neighbor, Veronica Mitchell, was almost her polar opposite. A single mother of one and an ER nurse with 15 years under her belt, Veronica had lived at 50 Meadow Lane for nearly a decade. Her days were long and her patience short, often finding peace only in the late hours of the night when she watered her garden or read quietly on her porch. She was known for being reserved, fiercely protective of her space and her teenage son, Jaden. At first, things between Isabel and Veronica had been polite. Smiles exchanged across the lawn, the occasional wave, and a short chat about garbage pickup times or where to find the best produce in town. But beneath the civility, tensions had been simmering. Isabel, with her flair for perfection and constant home improvement projects, began renovating the fence that separated their properties, replacing Veronica's old wooden panels with a sleeker metal design, without consultation. That didn't sit well with Veronica. Then came the complaints about noise, Isabel's children laughing too loudly, their toys rolling onto Veronica's driveway, and late-night parties that ran past 10. Veronica, not one to keep quiet, retaliated in her own way by calling the neighborhood committee, filing small but formal complaints, and even reporting Isabel's dog for barking excessively. Their exchanges became increasingly cold. What was once neighborly turned awkward, then strained, then bitter. The final straw came the morning Isabel discovered her rose bushes, her pride and joy, uprooted and lying in a heap beside her trash bins. She had planted them herself, deep crimson hybrid teas that lined the curve of her lawn, precisely 1 inch away from the property line. She was certain they were within her boundary. And now, they were gone. Nathan wasn't home that morning. He had left for a work trip the night before, and Tyler was already at school. Isabel stood over the torn plants, her fists clenched and heart pounding. She turned to face Veronica's porch, her mind racing, fury building. That was when she saw Veronica, in her navy scrubs, unlocking her car, a cup of coffee in hand, about to leave for her shift. Isabel didn't wait. Baby Zoe clung to her side, confused by her mother's tense energy, as Isabel crossed the small stretch of grass that separated their homes. "You did this," she said, her voice like a low growl. Veronica turned slowly. "Excuse me?" "My roses. You tore them out." "You're being ridiculous," Veronica replied sharply. "Why would I touch your plants?" "Because you hate them. You said they were creeping onto your driveway." "I said they were messy, not that I was going to yank them out of the ground." Isabel pointed a trembling finger. "You're lying. And you're delusional." The argument escalated quickly. Words turned sharp. Accusations flew. Fingers were pointed. Baby Zoe began to cry. And neighbors, one by one, began to peek through their blinds and curtains. And then, someone called the police. Officer Mark Reynolds had just finished his morning coffee when the dispatch call came in. Disturbance reported at Meadow Lane, possible domestic argument, code 415. He sighed. Brookhaven wasn't exactly known for crime. He'd spent over 2 decades wearing the badge, and most of his calls here involved lost pets, suspicious squirrels, or teenagers toilet papering mailboxes. But something in the dispatcher's voice gave him pause. This wasn't just a noise complaint. There was urgency. So he turned on his siren, just briefly, as he approached the street lined with pristine lawns and uneasy faces peeking out from behind white curtains. As his patrol car pulled into view, the neighborhood unfolded before him like a tense theater scene. A crowd had already begun to gather at a respectful distance, neighbors standing silently on their porches, arms folded, watching. The main show, however, was taking place between two women, toe-to-toe in the middle of the street, voices raised, faces flushed, fingers jabbing in the air like swords. One woman clutched a baby, the other looked like she was ready to throw punches. Officer Reynolds parked his cruiser slowly, stepped out, and adjusted his hat. He had a calm presence, the kind that only came from years of diffusing human chaos. He walked up, hands visible, voice firm but measured. "Ladies," he said, "let's take a breath here." They both froze for half a second, then started talking over each other. "She tore up my roses," Isabel shouted, bouncing the crying baby slightly on her hip. "This is harassment." "She's harassing me," Veronica shot back. "Every week it's something new." "I didn't touch her plants." Reynolds held up his hand. "One at a time." Isabel's breathing was fast and shallow. Veronica's jaw was tight. Zoe had quieted now, sensing the tension had reached a new level. Reynolds turned his attention to the small pile of upturned roses at the edge of Isabel's yard. Then to the thin line in the grass, where the old fence once stood, and finally to the faint white surveyor markings on the curb. "Let me ask some questions," he said calmly. "Were either of you present when the plants were removed?" "No," Isabel said, "but they were there last night. And now gone." Veronica folded her arms. "And how do you know it was me?" "Because you've made comments before. You hate those roses." "That doesn't mean I pulled them up." The officer nodded. "Anyone else have access to your yard, Mrs. Carter? Landscapers? Gardeners? Teenagers messing around?" "No one," Isabel replied. "Nathan does the yard work himself." Reynolds scratched his chin. "All right. Let's not jump to conclusions just yet." A voice from across the street chimed in. Mr. Dobbins, a retiree known for his meticulous memory and habit of watching the neighborhood from his recliner by the bay window. "I saw a kid out there around midnight," he said. "Tall, hoodie, couldn't tell who it was. But he was crouched by the flower bed. Thought he was just being nosy." Veronica's eyes narrowed. "Jaden was out last night." Isabel turned sharply. "Of course. Your son. Don't you accuse my son of vandalism." Veronica said, her voice rising again. "I'm not accusing. I'm pointing out the obvious." Reynolds stepped between them. "Enough." His tone dropped into something heavier now, something that silenced the street for a moment. "We are not going to escalate this further in front of your children, your neighbors, or the baby," he said. "We'll treat this like a civil dispute unless further evidence proves otherwise. I'm filing an incident report. You both can follow up at the station if you want to press charges." The air was thick with resentment. Neither woman spoke. Veronica rocked back slightly, holding Zoe just a little tighter now. Isabel's jaw twitched as she stared at the torn plants, the broken roots that felt symbolic of something deeper than a gardening disagreement. Reynolds softened his tone. "Look, neighbors fight. It happens. But this has gotten personal. And personal feuds turn toxic real fast. You don't want that. Especially not with kids in the picture." Neither woman responded. The crowd began to retreat. Curtains closed again. Porches emptied. But the damage had been done. Lines had been drawn, not just on the lawn, but in trust, in patience, in reputation. Veronica turned without a word and walked back to her driveway. Isabel stood there a moment longer, then turned and headed back inside. Baby Zoe was already drifting off, unaware that her mother had just stepped into something much bigger than a ruined flower bed. Officer Reynolds sighed again. He knew this wouldn't be the last call to Meadow Lane.